the claims form. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Isabel. So yeah, this is the front page of the claims form. So here you need to fill in the claim period and claim number. So for example, if this is your first claim and you put in 1, enter your bank details and make sure these are correct, as this is where the claim will be paid. If you have achieved any jobs created or jobs safeguarded, please include an employment verification form with your submission. And if this is your first claim, you don't need to fill in any of column D on claim 1 on the first page. This is a section with the red rectangle around. You just need to fill out E column, cell 26, which the green arrow is pointing to for your first claim. In subsequent claim forms, you need to fill in column D using the figures from your previous claim. And finally, always sign and always date this page. And that needs to be, if you're getting it filled in by someone else in the organisation, it needs to be the person with the right authority to sign that form. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is expenditure. So here is where you list your expenditure, providing details like supplier name, the invoice number, date of invoice and defrayal, payment method, details of expenditure and amount. So the main thing to look out for here is if you have irrecoverable VAT, you must put this into the irrecoverable VAT column. Otherwise, it won't go into the calculations and you will have less spend because that won't be accounted for. You'll also need to submit all evidence for why it is irrecoverable. Additionally, the form automatically adds VAT to the net figure. So if there's no VAT, this needs to be adjusted in column K to 0 by changing the formula for the cell. Next slide, please. So milestones, you need to update revised timelines where applicable. This is really important due to the limited time left in the programme. So please here, if anything has slipped, please do put this in here. It's important so that we can keep an eye and work with you on delivering your project to time. These will need to be agreed with your project lead and they must be informed as soon as possible. Please include any publicity information for this quarter or that is planned in the future in the publicity section. Next slide, please. So outputs and outcomes, fill this in with any outputs and outcomes for the quarter and add detailed information or any information regarding slippages in the space provided. Please submit your self-declaration form for each outcome for each quarter and an employment verification form for any jobs created or safeguarded. Next slide, please. So this is around narrative and risk. So progress reports just needs to be for this quarter. So if it's a follow-on claim, what have you achieved this quarter compared to the previous quarter? If it's your first claim, what have you achieved so far since the project started? You must fill this out even if you have no outputs or outcomes. So it's important that we get this every quarter. Include any risks for this quarter, although please alert your project lead if there are any new ones that can impact on delivery. So for example, you might have slippage with the builders building it, so please do include those. Slide 9, please. So this is the claims process summary. So please include all invoices and defrayal information with your claim, and we need that. This is kind of a common area where sometimes people forget. Please do include with every claim line all that supporting evidence, because this is what can often hold claims up. So do provide all that information so you can evidence full defrayal for each line of expenditure on your claim form. The claim form includes a progress section allowing you to provide updates on project activity, so including the achievement of milestones and targets up to the end of each quarter, and the self-declaration form for the targets achieved must accompany each claim. And then if you have, again, created any jobs or safeguarded any jobs, please include an employment verification form with your submission. If you do not have any expenditure to claim for an activity period, just to kind of recap, you're still required to submit a progress report by the submission deadline, providing a narrative update on the project's development. And this is another thing, people often don't submit this claim form and update because they feel they haven't spent anything, but we still need to understand the progress and that your project is moving forward. So important that you do submit this. Thank you. Over Over to you now, Isabel.
Thanks, James. So I'll now talk us through how to fill out the self-declaration form. So as you can see in the video that's playing, in the cells at the top, you should enter your name as applicant, your project reference, and project name. Then if you click on the drop-down next to output and outcome, you must pick the output or outcome that you are describing in this form. So please note you will need to submit a new self-declaration form for each output for each quarter. So if you're unable to see the drop-down options, if you zoom again, as shown in the video, it should change the font size of that drop-down. We've amended this self-declaration form so that it's easier to use, and we'll send out this new version in a follow-up email to this event. But it's also on our website if you want to download it now. You then fill in the fields that appear once you've picked the drop-down, and it will show you the evidence on the side related to the output or outcome, but you don't need to send us this evidence unless requested. This is just what you need to store. You're not able to reuse a previously submitted self-declaration form. For example, for a new quarter, you cannot add additional achieved outputs to the bottom of a previously submitted form. It must be a new self-declaration form per output per quarter. And this is for our recording purposes. And some of you may have been told differently, but this is a new process, so we've had to change it. So all outputs and outcomes unique to this quarter are documented on the form. So for the output shown on the video, which is number of new enterprises created as a result of support, you need to enter on the form the enterprise name, enterprise address, and description of the support given that led to the new enterprise creation. And the information that you have to enter will change depending on the drop-down. If you have any queries related to the self-declaration form, please email goodgrowthclaims@cornwall.gov.uk. So fill out the information requested, then sign it and date it and send it with your claim, and that's it. Next slide, please. So if you need to fill out this form for another output, you can either use a new template and attach this to an email, each of them to an email separately, or you can copy the tab into another tab in the same spreadsheet. And this is shown in the picture. So this is done by right-clicking the tab at the bottom that says self-declaration form. Then you click move or copy, which brings up the table we can see there, and then check the box for create a copy. And then you'll have another tab, which is a copy of this one, where you can fill out another output for the quarter. Again, this webinar will be put on our website and YouTube channel. So if you want to rewatch any part of this, including the claims process or this, you can do it at your own leisure. And if you have any problems, please get in touch with us at goodgrowthclaims@cornwall.gov.uk, and we can send you instructions. Next slide, please, Amanda. So now we've gone over the claims form and the self-declaration form, we'll go over some of the common issues that we see with claims forms that can prevent a claim being paid on time. In order to get paid as promptly as possible, please provide full evidence of defrayal for all items of expenditure, from invoice to payment, including clear identification on the bank statement for when the related payment leaves the project bank account. Additionally, for match funding in kind, you also need to evidence this figure each quarter, and this can be giving us an invoice representing the in-kind match. If you need any more information on in-kind match, again, please email us at goodgrowthclaims@cornwall.gov.uk. And this is our new dedicated claims email address. And it's really important that everything related to claims goes into this one, because otherwise it might get lost into the mailbox of someone who might not be in. So as also mentioned in the claims process overview, outputs and outcomes need to be properly described in the claims form in all the different areas, such as the outputs and outcomes section, where you can provide details about how this is evidenced and any slippage. There's also the milestones and narrative sections. And this is also, we can have a clear picture of your project activity for the quarter. Make sure you are using the most up-to-date self-declaration form, and we'll send this out to everyone after the event, and you need to submit these for each output for each quarter. Finally, please ensure any other contractual conditions that need to be discharged, for example, anything that might be outstanding before a claim is paid, like statutory consents or evidence that match funding is in place. Please make sure this is submitted with your claim form too. All of this will ensure that you can be paid for your claim as quickly as possible. Next slide, please. So other things to look out for is to remember to submit your claim on time and in line with your grant funding agreement. Please let your project lead know if there's been any changes that they need to be aware of, such as changes to milestones, risks, or changes to delivery. And final spend must be completed by the end date in your grant funding agreement. Next slide, please. So we will now answer the pre-submitted questions that we received. If you signed on over the night, over the past night, we won't have added your questions to this, so please add them to the end in our open floor Q&A. And also please note we will send these questions and answers out in a follow-up email so you can read the answers in your own leisure rather than having to frantically write notes here. So question 1, we seem to be missing reporting for some of our metrics. However, I'm sure this will be explained during the session.
Yeah, so can you expand on this question further in the chat, please, just so we can understand the precise nature? Thanks.
And we'll come back to that one if you can do that. Question 2, if we cannot claim any VAT, can the claim sheet be filled in with amounts including VAT rather than entering the amount excluding VAT, calculating or finding the VAT, then subtracting it?
If this is related to irrecoverable VAT, you must fill out all the columns on the expenditure page, including amounts with VAT, and then entering the value of irrecoverable VAT into column M.
Thank you. So question 3, will it continue to be necessary to provide full evidence for every line of expenditure, or do you think that we might move to the ESIF model of randomised sampling?
You will need to provide full evidence for every line of expenditure unless told otherwise by your project lead or claim officer.
Thank you. So question 4, are you able to provide a list of approved external evaluators?
Yeah, so we'll send out the list of, there's a list for IED, which is professional evaluators. We'll send out that with the questions and answers, which will be in a follow-up email after this session. I think it's just important to say that we don't kind of endorse or check those consultants. So it's very much just a list for yourselves as project holders to then kind of check and go through your tendering and procurement process for appointing a consultant.
Thank you. So question 5, can you also send written details of the claim process also, please? Thank you.
Yeah, written details for how to fill out the claims form can be found on the Help tab on the claims form. Please contact us if you need a further resource once you've looked at this.
Thank you. So question 6, this will be my first webinar and I'm just working on my first claim. Is there information within the bank statement or payslips that we should be redacting? For example, national insurance number?
Yeah, it's imperative that salary evidence in the form of either payroll or payslips has been redacted of all employee personal data, such as national insurance number, home address, bank details. Any email received with any personal data will be rejected, and the applicant requested to provide a redacted version, as retaining the email and data is a breach of our privacy statement, GDPR, as we do not have a legitimate right to hold that data. Therefore, all data submitted needs to be redacted so the claim can be processed in a timely manner.
Thank you. So question 7. Hi, I emailed for app levy clarification and requested for related guidance. It would be great if you can provide information in this webinar. Thanks.
I'm afraid we will need more detail to understand the questions. We currently have no guidance on an apprenticeship levy. So please can you email goodgrowthclaims@cornwall.gov.uk with more information and we'll get back to you.
So question 8, are there any best practice tips for completing the self-declaration form, i.e. the level of detail needed?
Yeah, so the self-declaration form has fields with the information required. It is best to be as descriptive as needed to be able to outline the project delivery that's taken place for each output.
Thank you. So question 9, the VAT section is automatically completed by the Excel form. How do I input expenditure that does not attract VAT?
Yeah, to remove VAT from the calculation, you can change the formula of the cell, changing, for example, 0.2 to 0 or another figure if needed. If you need to enter irrecoverable VAT, please enter the figure of irrecoverable VAT into column M.
Thank you. So question 10, how do you handle retention on capital projects?
Yeah, we can only pay claims when all project costs have been defrayed, so spent and tracked through. If a project has any unpaid capital retentions by the grant funding agreement end date, these would not be eligible for grant. So please ensure all eligible costs have been fully defrayed by your project end date.
Thank you. And question 11, will we receive a second quarter claim form so the previous numbers are included in the totals, or do we continue with the same claim form? And if we could change slide, Amanda, please.
They use the same template from your first claim, but for your second claim, you must input figures from the first claim into the relevant fields on the front page, as shown in the graphic on the front page of the claim form.
Thank you. And that's that red box that you don't need to fill in claim 1. So question 12, we need to be sure that we can pay our contractors promptly enough that the project does not get held up. What will the delay be between submitting a claim and receiving our next advance payment be?
Yeah, the advance payment will be released once we've approved the claim and the spend is in line with Shared Prosperity Fund requirements, i.e. the previous advance is fully defrayed at the intervention rate. Details of these advance payments are set out in your grant funding agreement and any advance agreement. Should you wish to change the payment schedule, you need to liaise with your project lead to formally request and get in writing a change to expected payments to contractors. The claim needs to be on time. The time it takes to finalise a claim is dependent on various things, and the payment will not be released until finance and project performance and delivery checks have been passed. Then the payment terms are dependent on the type of organisation you are and the supplier contract that you have with Cornwall Council.
Thank you. So question 13, we are getting advance payments as we cannot bankroll the project ourselves. We have had our first advance payment. Can we claim the next one if we haven't spent the entirety of the previous one? We will need to be able to if the project isn't to be held up, as some contractors may be slower at invoicing than others.
Yeah, so the normal process is that the first advance is defrayed in full at the project intervention rate as per the grant funding agreement or your advance agreement. If the spend hasn't been fully defrayed, you'll have to add additional information on the email accompanying the claim. This should set out the invoices received and yet to be defrayed on your financial system, and/or an update of your cash flow or a list of invoices expected prior to the next submission. This will be checked to ensure that we can release the full advance. Otherwise, we reduce the next advance by the underspend on your previous advance. We will let you know if the payment is reduced.
So question 14, what is the latest date that our contractor can invoice us? Is it the 31st of March 2025 if we make payment on that day?
So the invoice must be dated no later than the 31st of March 2025. Defrayment can happen after this date, but prompt payment must happen as the deadline for claims cannot be extended. The final claim must be submitted by the 30th of April 2025 to us at Cornwall Council.
Thank you. And last question from the pre-submitted ones. The outcomes and outputs on the self-declaration form don't match those on the progress tab of the claim form. Can you clarify how to complete the self-declaration form in instances where they don't match?
Yeah, so please can you provide further information on the outcomes that you cannot find on the self-declaration? You can email goodgrowth@goodgrowth.gov.uk in any instance such as this, and the claims team will be able to look into this for you.
Thank you. So next slide, please. We'll now move on to the open floor Q&A. So as you have been doing, please type your questions in chat. Dawn, our amazing audit and compliance officer, is currently answering them. So yeah, if there are any that haven't been picked up, please just feel free to type them in again and we'll get to them. Or alternatively, if you would like to ask your question over the microphone, please raise your hand and then we will answer your question. Georgia, would you like to turn your mic on and ask your question?
Hi, could you just go back to page 1 of the claim form and just go through columns D and E again?
Yeah, so I think that might be 2 slides previous. We've had that in, Amanda. Thank you.
Yeah, so like on the first claim, you said you just put the project spend. No, you just put it in column E. Then on the next one, do you just put in column E into column D?
So column E, you will put in your first claim because that's the match funding, your third-party match funding that you'll be using that claim. Whereas the column D is for your claim from your previous claim. So on claim 2, you will enter the figures such as the funding that you've had from your previous claim, and then your match funding in there as well. So it will just be using the figures from your first claim and putting them in there, and then that will be able to decide the intervention rate for you.
Okay, so is it cumulative? Is it like a running total?
Yeah, so that will increase each time. So by the third claim, it will then be all of the current spend that has happened to date.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And who is next? So I've got Alison Lee.
Hi. Yes, thank you. So just to clarify, when you mentioned that the last invoice date needs to be the 31st of March, so if payment is made in the month of April, but prior to the submission of the claim, that's acceptable? It doesn't have to be defrayed on the 31st of March?
No, as long as the payment is prompt, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, all right, lovely.
Yeah, and
Thank
as long as
you.
the invoice is, yeah, dated before the 31st or on the 31st of March.
Yeah, it was more the payment side of it. I was just double checking, but yeah, that's great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and just to add to that, the payment will need to be made in early April so that you can pull your claim together and submit it to us by the end of April. So there's no kind of slippage on that. Otherwise, we won't be able to pay your claims out.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much.
Next.
Hi, yeah, I've got I feel like I've got about 1 million questions. And so I guess one of the first ones to ask is how do we get more help apart from just emailing the email, which I recognize works well for you guys, but for us, or for me personally on the ground, I have very limited time to do admin. I run a community organization, and so if I'm doing admin today, for example, I might not get to look at anything again for another week. So emailing is really not an efficient way for me to get this work done. Is there a way that we can have phone numbers to call for support?
So we don't have phone numbers for support, but we can set up a meeting with you if you require further support. But you would kind of need to email us first so we understand the issues, and then we can like arrange a further meeting to talk through them. But yes, we also do have resources on our website, including video, which is on our YouTube channel as well, which goes through in slower detail than we did in this webinar, the claims form and how to fill it in as well. So that might be useful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'd also say, yeah, your project lead, obviously, as well as that, having that regular conversation with them. So if you need a bit of additional support or advice, they can help as well. So across the team, there are the resources there to help support you.
Yeah, your project lead will set up a meeting with us as well if you need it, or we can come out and see you to work through anything that you need.
Great. Okay, thank you. Other questions. There was mention about evaluators, professional evaluators, but I've not heard anything about professional evaluators. So that was like, can you explain what you were talking about there?
Yeah, so pretty much all the projects will need kind of an external evaluation. It will say in your grant funding agreement. So I guess this is a good opportunity for everyone on the call just to reread and remind yourself of what you're kind of required to deliver within your grant funding agreement. And one of the kind of conditions which will probably apply to pretty much most projects is that you need to do a monitoring and evaluation exercise report. And the way to do that is get effectively an external evaluator into your project to assess what we're looking for here is, and it's a benefit to yourselves, is lessons learned, what went well, what could have gone better, are there success stories, have you delivered more than you originally set out to do? So it's capturing all of that information, not just kind of quantitative but also qualitative, that's useful for yourselves and for us. And then what we're using with all those evaluations at the project level is we're using those to help feed into our program level evaluation. So that's kind of why it's in most projects. If you're a small project, very small, you may be able to do an internal evaluation, but most projects, depending on grant amount, are required to deliver an external evaluation.
Okay, so this is something that's separate to the claims form, because when I was filling in the application form and looking at the grant funding agreement, I assumed that the evaluation was the claims, but this is like a totally separate thing.
Yeah, so this is a standalone exercise to monitor and evaluate your whole project kind of in its entirety that's been Shared Prosperity funded.
Okay, and there's like a list of people who we have to use, or we can use
You can,
anyone?
yeah, so it's totally up to yourselves, but what we do need is, yeah, they need to be kind of suitably qualified to undertake that monitoring and evaluation role. So as long as you're satisfied, and it's up to the project who you appoint, you know, through kind of fair, open tendering and procurement procedures, that you appoint someone that kind of meets your needs and will give you that kind of independent review of your project.
Okay, right, thank you. How do we, sorry, I've just worked through my list. Irrecoverable VAT. So we aren't VAT registered, so we can't recover any VAT. What evidence would we provide?
So you don't need, so you're saying you can't recover any VAT, so you don't need, yeah.
You just need to, are you a small organisation?
Yeah.
Because basically what we'd say is, what we normally get is a letter from your accountant to say you're not VAT registered. But if you're a charity or whatever, you just send us a declaration, and then I'll just check to make sure that you're not VAT registered. And if you're not VAT registered,
so can I just?
But you need to send a formal documentation from yourselves to say that you aren't VAT registered, because if we subsequently find out that you are recovering VAT elsewhere, then we need to reclaim that money back off you.
But that could just be an email from us saying that?
It needs to be a formal document, so we prefer letter-headed paper attached to an email, but it depends on the organisation, to be honest. Most organisations send us their accountants send us a document.
Okay. And we arranged monthly payments up front because we haven't got the money to cash flow the project. So how does that work in terms of quarterly claims?
We don't do monthly payments. We only do quarterly. So are you quarterly in advance?
Yes.
Right. Well, you'll get a quarter in advance. You'll get a full quarter's money in advance. So your first, you'll get a month's worth of 3 months worth of money on your first, prior to your first claim.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I don't know what organisation you are. We can speak after, and I can tell you.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Spots it. You people in strange places. Yeah, you do, don't you? That comes to Chris and Gemma. So
I think
I'm done.
Yeah, okay. Martin, if you're next. Antonio, would you mind unmuting yourself?
yeah, exactly.
Oh, I think that might be someone else actually. I'm just going to mute them. Thank you. Martin, if you could go next, please.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to come back to the point you made earlier about defrayal post of March 25, because what you said about defraying in early April to meet the submission of the 30th of April directly contradicts what's in our SLAs. So our SLAs state that financial completion date should be the 31st of March and all expenses should be defrayed by that date. So I don't know if there's a change in the program too that you can get past that date, but it was kind of a question for myself and a question that I didn't want anybody else to fall foul of if everybody's SLA state that date.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I think we're talking kind of general to meet most of the project's needs on this call, but at the end of the day, you know, each project is kind of held by either service level agreement or a grant funding agreement, which is particular to your organisation. So do have a look at that, and it will give you your end date where your project has to finish by. So that's when you will, and that's both physical and financial completion. So if it's different to what we've said, because we're talking general terms to kind of reach the whole audience, then speak to your project lead just to get precise confirmation.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Antonia, I think you've got your hand up again. If you'd like to come back in.
I didn't mean to, sorry.
Oh, okay, no, that's an old hand, no worries. So I'll just see if there's any in the chat that haven't been addressed. So where we make bulk payments for payroll, only the total bulk amount is shown on the bank statement. How would you propose that we evidence defrayal? Has this one been answered?
No, I'll answer that one.
Thank you. And so we will go through all of the questions that have been put in chat and add them onto a sheet to be sent out onto the follow-up email. That should come in this afternoon. So then you can have a look at all the answers. So please can the claims form that should be sent so that we can extend the cells. All of our milestones turn into hashtags, so I cannot see the information. I've requested the form to be resent a few times, but just allowing it to extend would be very useful. So yeah, we have to lock the claims forms, so otherwise all the cells could very easily, all the calculations could be destroyed. So if you keep emailing them when you need them to be resent, or I can submit a request to the people who do the claims forms to see if we can make the cells wider. If we're not VAT registered and not recovering VAT, is irrecoverable VAT additional to the project budget? And if Dawn could come in on that one.
Well, I have answered it on,
Oh, okay,
on
sorry.
the, yeah, but no, it's not. Your project cost, and you, if you can't recover VAT, that should have been done at application stage. It's quite important if you're not VAT registered that if you're going to recover in irrecoverable VAT, that was in your cash flow at the beginning when you put in your application, because the SPF value is the SPF value. We can't pay you anything above that. And if you're in a position where you haven't got that in your original cash flow and you need to speak to your project leads as quickly as possible, because there might have to be some changes or some because that could have a 20% implication of a financial implication on your project, in that you'll not have the money to pay for the rest of the project. It is imperative that you put that in your cash flow.
So we've got, can we be sent a fresh claim document after the call, please? Thank you. So Danielle, if you could send your project information to the goodgrowthclaims@cornwall.gov.uk, then we can send you a fresh claim form, just so we don't have to put any project specific information into the chat here. So we've got Nikki, our wages go out of our bank as one payment. How do we split this, as not all employees will be included in the claim? How do we evidence this payment?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm just trying to keep up with the questions in the inbox. What's the question?
Our wages go out of our bank as one payment. How do we split this, as not all employees will be included in the claim? How do we evidence this payment?
Because they would, that's just the defrayal, that there would be other evidence that you would be giving us for each individual employee that is on the project. Yes, that includes all payments, but what we'll do is we can see the whole bank. That is the full defrayal. That is the only evidence you can give us for defrayal. But we will then look at the individual pay slips, payroll report, or timesheets, dependent on the type of project and what evidence we've agreed that you can give us. Obviously, for very large organisations, they're going to have a massive payroll, and they're not going to individually bank pay one, the 5 people that's on this project. So we understand that, but which is why we need the earlier evidence, which is the pay slips or the timesheets or the agreed payroll report. It has to be tailored to the type of project.
And we've got our second last question. I was interested in the answer to this question asked by another person. Output and outcome self-declaration form. Can the data recorded on each self-declaration form be cumulative for each quarter, e.g. a live snapshot of what the project has achieved to date, or must each self-declaration form only record the outputs or outcomes achieved during the quarter? So this is only for the quarter. You cannot do it cumulatively. You may have been told otherwise, but I'm afraid that that's no longer the case. So you need to have a self-declaration form for each output for each quarter. And then the last question is, when will you be sending the claims pack out? So I don't know if you are a new project, or if you haven't received your claims, you might be newly contracted. If not, that should be coming in due time. And if not, then please contact goodgrowthclaims@cornwall.gov.uk if you feel like you should have already received this. And did we have a final hand up, or?
Oh yes, that was a purposeful hand up from me.
Okay, yeah.
Just sorry to clarify, do we have to send an update for every outcome or output, even if nothing, we haven't got any? You know, do we just put 0 for each one, or do we only submit them for the ones?
Yeah, only if you have outputs or outcomes for the quarter. There's yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
And was there another question? Yeah, so self-declaration forms are required for every claim if there are new outputs or outcomes for the quarter. Yeah. So I think that is it for the questions. And again, next slide, please, Amanda. If you have any questions, you can submit them to goodgrowthclaims@cornwall.gov.uk and we will get back to you. And please make sure you send all your claims into this email address. And this will make sure that it will be seen by someone rather than lost in an inbox. So we'll be sending out a follow-up email with the questions and answers and the new self-declaration form. Thank you for coming, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.